Hello everybody, thank you for coming back to my show and watching my video. Please subscribe. I've been doing a lot of research about the EU's price cap on Russian oil, so I wanted to go ahead and take a trip down memory lane. If this sounds familiar to you guys, for those that know a little bit about history, back in the 1970s, we had just abandoned our gold standard. The US was starting to print a lot of money, similarities between back then and today. We were also energy importers at that point, just like we are today. So similarities, right? And here's how and why it matters. But the EU just set a price cap on Russian oil to $60. When this last happened was the 1970s. They had set a price cap to like somewhere in the $5 range. What that ended up causing though, and here's how it impacts our market, is it created a lot of third-party resellers. Those third-party resellers, a lot of research I've done online, and I'll go ahead and post it where I found my source in the comments or down below, but what ended up happening is there were a lot of third-party resellers that exploded out of nowhere, like they were created, and they would resell from like maybe 5 to 10 times all the way up to $10. So even though it was at $10, they put a price cap at $5, so it wouldn't continue going higher. They ended up driving the price all the way to $10, which exacerbated the problem, and because of that, it made everything go up instead. And what it's going to do to our inflation problem, because right now, if you've seen, we have an inflation problem that we're trying to combat. The Fed is like seriously increasing interest rates. I don't know if you've seen, but what it's going to do is, because of the EU's decision to go ahead and put a price cap, and the US, like, we're all allies here, so they're of course going to have to follow that. If they try implementing that, it's going to exacerbate our problems in today's world, because right now our inflation was, per their words, it went up to like 8-9%, but the real numbers were probably almost double than that if you saw at the pump, the price of everything else. So in today's world, what's going to happen is, if they end up doing that, we might see similarities between them, or not them, but like more third-party resellers being created just so they can drive up the price of oil above the cap that they set, and it won't change anything. Because back then, it ended up, there were so many resellers that it drove the price times 2, like from what it was at to where it's going to be, and right now, or like to where it went, and right now, what the EU is trying to do is, the crude price of Russian oil is trading around $80-something. A lot of nations are getting discounts and stuff, but right now, if they set a price cap at $60, it's not going to work, because they're trying to do it at 60. It's trading at 80. Back in the 1970s, one of the major things that ended up happening was we were printing a lot of money, but it was because they were also trying to put a lot of energy controls in the energy markets, which is what we're seeing today, because we wouldn't have that problem if they allowed our energy companies to start like producing oil. Obviously, they don't want them to get rich, which is all geopolitical. We're not going to be talking about that, but because of that, it's going to cause everybody else to get hurt, and it's just going to drive up the prices of everything. And at the end of the day, it's not going to fix anything, because we need to start, if we want to be independent and have a good economy, we need to allow energy markets to be free. That way we don't have to depend on any controlling like this, because if we have to set price controls, it's because we're not allowing the free market to take effect. We are trying to control energy markets, and when you try to step in too much and control anything, it just drives the prices of things up, because too much control it doesn't allow for innovation. The markets always find a way to make things efficient. And when you step in, that's when you break things. And right now, what we're seeing is too much regulation in the energy markets, just like we did in the 1970s. That matters because what ended up happening is President Jimmy Carter, look it up in history, he ended up having to sign a bill to allow the free markets in energy to take effect. He loosened up regulation, allowed them to actually start producing, and look what happened. We ended up seeing that we became an exporter again for a little bit of time, and then from there, we're having the same issue right now. We had to shut down. Like, there's no investment into our own of like creation. That way, we can become exporters again, and we're having the same problem. So, what I really think that we need to do is we need to back off, because the more that you try and step in, the more you're going to hurt things at this point. And you can't remove one of the world's largest exporters of energy off like that. It just doesn't work. Unfortunately for you guys, like, that understand how energy works, that's pretty much how it is. Like, you just can't remove the biggest supplier if they're the ones sitting on it. It it's land. So if that ends up happening, you're gonna go, or not if, but like if they try and push it to a degree where they won't back off, you're gonna see the same thing repeat in history. And I just want you to be prepared for it, because what it usually does, look at the 1970s. I'll go ahead and show you here. Give me 1 second. Let me see. Okay, so this is what I wanted to show you where I got my information. It was actually at the Institute for Energy Research, posted by Robert P. Murphy, April 18th, 2018. I'll link it down below, but what the information pretty much says is what I was explaining, how in August of 1971, President Richard Nixon enacted comprehensive wage and price controls similar to what we're seeing today. Back then, it was a different name. We're not going to be talking about any politics or anything like that. I do understand the tensions and everything, but similar facts are what I'm going to point out today. So think about it like this. Right now, the EU just put a price cap on Russian oil, different name this time. And so back then, it was OPEC. So what we had just gone through was we went ahead and got off the gold standard, and inflation started to go up. Assets of things started to go up as well in price, and the prices of things in the economy started to go up. That's what happens when you devalue the world reserve currency, which is the dollar, right? So as the dollar gets cheaper, everything else starts going up in value, or at least in price. And so, what ended up happening is they try to put control over how much these energy companies were making through regulation. And so that only exacerbated the problem, because when you put a price control on oil, there's no way to stop the actual market from making the price of it be what the price of the market says it's going to be. You know, you can't stop free market. You can only intervene, but you break things when that happens. So one of the things that happened back then when they set the price control, and this is extremely important, is a lot of third parties popped up. So what those parties were, they were resellers. They would buy the price of oil, or they would buy the barrel at whatever was the price cap that they set it to. Back then it was like somewhere in the mid $5. And so what ended up happening is there were lots of hands that ended up getting inside the transaction, and one would sell it to the other for like 50 to 70 cents more, all the way up until they bid the price up to like $9.55, as you can see here. Like, and then afterwards they sent it to the refiner. So that only ends up extra or exacerbating the problem, and that's bad, because we're seeing something similar today where we are setting a price cap. We are just about to do that on Monday. Not we, but like the EU. And so when that happens, you're probably going to see history repeat itself with third party sellers trying to bid up the price, because you can't stop. Think about it like this: it's selling for $80 over here in pretty much the rest of the world. And you have a select few that are trying to say it's 60, right? So you're allowing now third party hands to get in there, buy it for a cheap price before it ever even makes it onto the market. a lot of people are going to resell it to each other, and then it's probably going to stop around the area where it's selling for normally, and you're not going to fix anything. That is literally just repeating history. And so the only way to fix this is look at, or not fix this, but I'll get to that in a second. Look what happens here. So Nixon signs the bill 1971. It doesn't take effect until 1973. 1973 is around this area right here. It starts to crash the market because look at what happens with the price of energy. It starts to move up. As energy goes up right here, you start to see people front run that, right? And then boom, energy explodes, obviously, because the value of the dollar is also going down. Uh, Energy goes up in price. You can't stop price of energy. Like if the world starts to use more energy because it's getting more sophisticatedly advanced as a society, you can't stop that. You can only try and do everything you possibly can to make it cheaper. So by putting controls and regulations, you only hurt the free market from finding efficient ways to make it efficient. So that's why the free market needs to be free. And so what ended up happening here, it didn't, it only exacerbated the problem because look at what oil was trading at. Let me remove this. Check this out. We were in the $3 to $5 that they were trying to put the price cap on. And then look, it shot up all the way to the 30s, 40s. Then it came back into like the 20s. And it wasn't until the 1980s, mid 80s, it was like, yeah, mid 80s. It was around 85 where everything, the price of oil started to tank and normalize. But the reason why, though, is not because of that. It was finally someone listening, someone bold enough, which was, let me see, President Jimmy Carter, that ended up finally signing a bill or a deal to liberalize energy markets. And President Ronald Reagan accelerated the process when he took office. So, by allowing the free market to finally uh, be free and stay like give freedom to energy and allow more abundance of it, you bring down the prices because think about supply demand. More supply, less demand, right? Well, not less demand, but like too much supply, it drives the prices down. And so what ended up happening, if you start putting so many controls on oil, you drive a lot of business out of it. And you don't create abundance. You actually make it harder to get. And when you do that, you drive up the prices. So at the end of the day, the free market always wins. And as we saw here, same thing. The only difference that we have this time in the market, back then, we were booming into a market and they were increasing interest rates into a booming market. Right now, they're increasing interest rates into a declining market. So that's only going to exacerbate the problem for us. And we have so much problems with inflation right now. And like, if energy goes back up, what do you think that's going to do to inflation? So I hope you enjoy and understand the content that I'm putting out there because I don't see it being put out there on the internet elsewhere, especially this. There's very select few people, and I have not seen anyone talk about this yet. So if you enjoy the content, please subscribe because I'm only going to continue putting this good content out there. Like, this is gold, and people need to understand and be ready for this because no one understands and no one's ready except like the smart individuals that are on it every single day. Like, this is why I want you guys to become knowledgeable and aware of all these things, and that's why I'll bring it to you. Just all you got to do is subscribe. But hey, have yourself a great day. Thank you so much, and goodbye.